artist is indeed a distinguished portraitist, perhaps without, I think, too much question, the most distinguished portrait artist in Western New York. So we feel very fortunate to have had him here, having done what he did in Rochester, in his studio. Before I talk about what he did by way of that portrait, I would like to talk about his restoration of John Fausold. And perhaps there ought to be a story here in terms of where John came from, this portrait that is. John's portrait probably hung in Harrisburg. We are not sure about that when he was a member of the General Assembly of Pennsylvania. It wound up in the attic of John's Kecksburg home, and in due course it was retrieved by one of John's grandsons, Dr. Clyde Fausold. I suppose John's son Harry, and you have this all laid out for you in the back of the program, John's son Harry probably, perhaps like John, too modest to have this hang in that fine old homestead in Kecksburg. So it was taken out of the attic, as I understand, and retrieved by Dr. Clyde Fausold, one of Harry's 3 children, and restored and placed in that home in Glenshaw, where Dr. Clyde Fausold practiced medicine. In due course, because there were 4 wonderful girls in that family, it was decided that it should stay in the male line of the family, so it went to Chuck in Scottsdale, Pennsylvania, a grandson of Harry Fausold. I was in Scottsdale some years ago, probably a dozen years ago now, and was in Chuck's home and admired this portrait so much, and Chuck said, "Here, take it." Now what Chuck meant by that was borrow it for a few months, and I did that, and my children, I think, came to enjoy it as I enjoyed it, and so I was going to have it reproduced, but I said to Chuck, "Hey, I'll pay you the money instead of my having it reproduced," and Chuck agreed to that. And I have a hunch that maybe Betty, Chuck's wife, felt somewhat like my wife did, not particularly enamored by this item to be placed in a home. But my children grew up with it, as the 4 Clyde Fausold girls grew up with it. And portrait artist Stanley Gordon restored it again because it needed restored again. I remember my daughter Marty, who was here, went to a program in Rochester on portrait painting, and she learned that by no means do you touch an oil painting with any kind of a duster. And my wife piped up and said, "Well, I've been dusting that every week." So we had, and it did begin to flake. Now, I don't think it flaked for that particular reason, but maybe my wife had something to do with that. And it needed some restoration. And Stanley Gordon did a fine job in terms of several things, which I won't get into too much detail with here, but redoing the collar that was beginning to fade, and the flaking generally, and he worked it down to the prime and put two new coats on it. Hey, enough on that. If I take that much time, I'll take too much time. In terms of Samuel Fausold, I gave artist Stanley Gordon about a dozen shots of my father taken when he was here at Indiana. And the principal one that he used in terms of pose was this one of my father in his office as president in the 1930s in John Sutton Hall. However, I preferred other facial expressions of my father, and Stanley Gordon blew up the very small pictures of him that I had given him and had those surrounding him as he began to sketch in what he was going to do. And he described to me, and I'm sorry he's not here, he's a very flamboyant guy and very entertaining, and I'm sure would come far more alive on this kind of thing than I am in terms of what I am trying to do. But he described to me that he did all the massive colors before he got into the face. And then he began working in the face after he decided what the colors should be, and prior to the colors he had the sketch, of course. And it is interesting that he put my father in front of the desk and not behind the desk, because he felt that if he were behind the desk that would detract from him, and that the desk would become the center of attention. And the same thing can be said about the bookcase. This particular shot of Father in his office shows the bookcase immediately behind him. And we, as Larry and I were talking about, thought that was kind of appropriate for a library to have books in the background. My father was a scholarly and a reader. But at first, Stanley Gordon did have the bookcases up near my father's head, but decided not to do that because that too would detract from the facial expression of my father. Thirdly, the wall in the office in John Sutton Hall was quite light, and he decided not to give it that light in the portrait because that too would detract from the lightness of the facial expression itself. So Stanley Gordon gave all of those things a good bit of consideration, and those few of us who knew him feel that it is a very good likeness. My cousin Billy and others here, I think, would agree with me. I guess there's nothing else to be said on that particular point, except that we are pleased by what he had done. One other comment, I guess, occurs to me. It is just a slightly larger than life size, and the purpose of that is that when you stand back and look at a portrait, you lose the life sizeness, but if you are at a distance, then having it slightly larger gives it more life size as we are standing here looking at it. Those are the principal points that Stanley Gordon made on that. It's a composite, obviously, based on the several images that I have given him. Now, Larry, am I supposed to proceed again? Three people here who rather represent these wings of the family as they are laid out in the back of the program. In terms of the Martin Luther Fausold wing of the family, I was hoping that genealogist Priscilla Fausold Weir from Philadelphia would be here, but she cannot be here. So to represent the Martin Luther Fausold wing of the family, I'm going to ask my niece and godchild, Margie, Dr. Margaret Ann Fausold Lazone, to stand up. Where are you, Margie? There's Margie. She represents here the Martin Luther Fausold wing of the family. And the Harry Fausold wing of the family, I want to introduce Sally Jo Fausold Jones. Sally Jo, who is not a genealogist. Stand up, Sally Jo, because you're the cement that has brought this wing of the family into this guy. Oh, maybe you can get up. She had knee operation. But Sally Jo is important to us because when we have had the family together, she has rather corralled her husband and other people to be among us. And in terms of the Mary Fausold Weldy wing of the family, fine genealogist Paul Weldy. Paul, stand up and just let them see. He's done wonderful work in terms of that wing of the family. I did want to introduce those.